Have you ever been made to feel so small, so insignificant, that the memory of it burns a hole in your soul for years to come? I mean a moment of pure humiliation. One where a person with a little bit of power decides to use it to crush your spirit right there in front of God and everybody. Have you ever felt that? Because that's exactly what happened to me. 16 years ago, I was just a trucker, a man trying to make an honest living on the open road. I left a state trooper way station on a dark highway feeling less than a man. My pride shattered into a million pieces on the dirty asphalt. But this isn't a story about defeat. This is a story about patience. It's a road revelation about how the deepest wounds can forge the strongest purpose. I didn't get loud. I didn't get angry. I got quiet. And in that quiet, I made a silent vow, a promise so deep it became the very mission of my life. A secret I carried for 16 long years. And that's why, when I finally returned to that exact same way station, on a bright, sunny afternoon, over a decade and a half later, I wasn't the same man. The rig was a little older, and so was I. But the shame was gone. It had been replaced by something else, something harder, something better. And the most important thing is, I wasn't alone. Sitting right there beside me in the passenger seat was my answer. He was my silent victory, the one person the cop never saw coming, the living, breathing result of that 16-year promise. What you're about to discover is how a single moment of disrespect can fuel a legacy that no one can tear apart. Stay with me through this trucker story, because the look on that trooper's face when he finally realized who was sitting next to me, well, that's a moment you are not going to want to miss. It was a victory sweeter than any revenge I could have ever dreamed of. But before I tell you what happened, before I reveal the words that were spoken, or rather, the powerful silence that fell over that way station, you need to understand who I am. You can't appreciate the victory without understanding the struggle. My name is Frank, and for 45 years, the highway has been my office, my church, and my home. It's a life of quiet dignity, something I'm sure many of you understand. In your own way, it's a world built on an unwritten code of honor, of helping a fellow driver in need, of earning respect not with a fancy degree, but with skill, with character, with the sweat on your brow. I've hauled steel through blizzards in the Rockies and produce through the blistering heat of the Mojave. I know the rhythm of the road, the hum of the diesel engine, the lonely beauty of a sunrise over an empty stretch of I-40. My life was simple, and it was honest, and that's all I ever wanted to be, an honest man. I thought my character was the only shield I would ever need in this world, but I was wrong. I learned the hard way that for some people, your character means nothing. All that matters is making you feel small so they can feel big. So let's go back. Let me take you back to that one dark night that changed everything. The moment that lit a fire in me that would burn for 16 years, all leading to one perfect, unbelievable moment of Justice Sarah worked the counter at a small diner off I-81 in Virginia, a place with worn-out vinyl booths and the best coffee for 100 miles. She had a simple, honest smile that could light up the grays of days. Every time I had a route going south, I'd make sure to stop there, just to talk with her. One day, I finally worked up the courage to ask her out. 2 years later, we were married in a small church, with a simple party, but it was filled with so much love. And then came Michael. The day my son was born, I cried like a baby, right there in the hospital, holding that tiny, perfect life in my arms. I made a promise to God and to myself, this boy would have everything I never did. He was going to study. He was going to be somebody important in this life. That moment, it changes a man. I'm sure there are parents listening to this right now who know that exact feeling. The moment you hold your child for the first time and the whole world just shifts on its axis. If you've ever had a moment like that, a moment that defined the rest of your life, I'd be honored if you shared a piece of that feeling in the comments below. Reading through them reminds me that we are all connected by these huge, life-changing promises we make. And if this kind of story means something to you, hitting that like button is more than just show your support. It helps this message of family and sacrifice reach more people who might need to hear it. By subscribing, you're helping build a community where these real-life stories always have a home. And I truly appreciate every single one of you for that. Sarah always supported that vow. She hadn't had much schooling either, but she was sharp, street smart, and we agreed on one thing. Michael's education would come first, no matter what it cost. And I buried myself in work to make it happen, taking any run, any time. I'd be Gone for weeks sometimes, just to earn a little extra. We were a team, building a future for our son, and for a long time, everything felt right. Until one particular day. A day that started just like any other, but ended with a shame so deep, it would fuel a fire in me for the next 16 years. Before that day, before the incident that changed everything, you have to understand the man I was. You have to know where I came from to see the full picture, to grasp the full impact of what happened. I grew up in the heart of Appalachia, a place where pride is carved into the mountains themselves. We didn't have much money, nobody did, but we had our name, and we had our word, and that meant everything. My father was a coal miner. His father before him. They were hard men, honest men, who believed you earned your place in the world with the sweat on your brow and the strength in your back. School was a luxury, something that took you away from the work that put food on the table. I learned enough to get by, to read the Bible, to sign my name, but that was about it. But there was a hidden truth I carried with me, a weight in my gut that never quite went away. Reading a complex form, or a long set of instructions, it felt like my brain would just short circuit. A quiet shame that I buried deep down, hoping no one would ever see it. The moment I got behind the wheel of my first rig, that was a transformation. That truck wasn't just a machine, it was freedom. The road didn't care if I could spell every word on a sign. It just cared if I could handle 18 wheels and 10 tons of steel with respect and skill. Out there, on the open highway, I wasn't the boy who struggled in school. I was Ada Estrada, the man who knew every curve of the I-40, every shortcut through the Rockies, every greasy spoon with a decent cup of coffee. And out there, I found a brotherhood. There's a mentality on the road, an unwritten code that says you help a driver in need. If a rig is on the shoulder, you pull over. If a man is short on cash for a meal, you cover him. It's a journey we're all on together. And the only thing that matters is your character, not your diploma. This life, this code, it had a huge impact on how I saw my future, and especially Michael's future. It taught me what it truly means to be a respected man. Now, I want to go even deeper on this subject, because this isn't just about not being good at reading. This is about the daily decisions you have to make to survive in a world that wasn't built for you. It's the behind-the-scenes story of a life lived on the defensive. Think about it. Every time I picked up a load, I'd stare at the manifest, my heart pounding a little faster, praying it was simple, praying I wouldn't have to ask a question that made me look foolish. I developed tricks. I'd ask the dispatcher to walk me through it, pretending I was just double-checking, just being thorough. When I was at a diner, I'd wait to hear what someone else ordered and then say, I'll have the same. It was a constant performance, a quiet dance to hide a part of me I was so deeply ashamed of. These were the daily revelations I lived with, the little adjustments that nobody ever saw. The truth is, my pride as a man was all tangled up with this secret. On one hand, I was the king of the road in my rig. I could navigate any storm, any city, any mountain pass. But on the other hand, a simple piece of paper could make me feel like a little boy again, lost and stupid. This internal conflict shaped my entire mentality. It wasn't just about the job. It was about my identity, and all of that, all that hidden pressure and quiet shame was simmering right below the surface. It was a time bomb, really, just waiting for the right person in the wrong moment to light the fuse. And that right there, that simmering pot of pride and fear, is something I think a lot of people carry in their own way. Comment below with the words, a father's promise. That promise was everything, but it didn't come out of nowhere. It had a beginning, a single point of light in my rough and tumble world. And that light was Sarah. She worked the late shift at a little roadside diner in Tennessee, a place called the Bluebird. I'd roll in after midnight, tired down to my bones, as she'd pour me a coffee with a smile that just washed away the road grime. She wasn't like anyone I'd ever met. She had this way of looking at you, really looking, and seeing right past the callous hands and the dusty jeans. She saw the man, not the trucker. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. My life on the road, her dreams of opening a small bakery someday. It was easy with her. I didn't feel that constant need to be on guard. That quiet shame I carried, it just seemed to get a little bit lighter when she was around. That was the first true transformation in my life, falling in love with her. We got married on a crisp autumn day. It wasn't a big affair, just a few friends and family, but it was the richest day of my life. We built a small, simple life together, a life full of a quiet kind of happiness I never knew was possible. And then came the moment that changed the entire landscape of my future. The day Michael was born, I remember standing in that sterile, white hospital room, the air buzzing with a quiet intensity, and they placed him in my arms, this tiny, perfect little person, his fingers wrapped around one of mine, and in that instant, the weight of 1,000 truckloads felt like nothing compared to the responsibility I felt for him. All my pride, all my fears, all my secret insecurities, they all came rushing to the surface. I looked at his innocent face, and I saw my own past. I saw the boy who struggled to read, the man who had to fake his way through simple paperwork, and a fire started in my chest. It wasn't just love, it was a fierce, protective instinct that was more powerful than anything I had ever known. It was in that moment, holding my son, but I made the vow. I didn't say it out loud. It was a silent promise between me, my boy, and God. This child would have opportunities I could only dream of. He would be educated. He would be articulate. He would stand tall in any room, in front of any person, and he would never, ever be made to feel small because he didn't know something. He would be respected. Now, I want to go even deeper on this subject, because understanding this vow is the key to the entire journey. This wasn't just a father's wishful thinking. This was a strategic decision that reshaped my entire mentality. The hidden truth is, from that day forward, every choice I made was dictated by that single promise. Every long-haul run I took, every holiday I missed, every dollar I saved, it all had a purpose. My life was no longer about just getting from point A to point B. It was about funding a mission. The road became my battlefield, and the enemy was the limitation that had haunted me my whole life. The impact of that moment was absolute. It provided the ultimate clarity. You see, the behind the scenes of my life was no longer about my own survival or my own pride. It was about paving a road for my son, a road I could never travel myself. It was a profound revelation for me, realizing that my strength wasn't just for me anymore. It was for him. This transformation from a man just trying to get by to a father with a singular, unwavering focus was everything. It gave me a reason to endure any hardship, to face any challenge, because I wasn't just working for a paycheck anymore. I was building a legacy. I was ensuring that the name on his diploma would erase the shame I felt over the words. I couldn't read that comment below with the words, a father's mission. That mission crystallized on one specific day, a Thursday in early March. I remember it like it was burned into my memory. Michael was about 14 at the time, a sharp kid already getting straight A's in subjects I couldn't even pronounce. I was hauling a load of steel coils from Ohio down to a plant in North Carolina. It was just another run, another day on the job. The sun was out, the road was clear, and I was making good time. I remember thinking about getting home, maybe taking Michael fishing that weekend. Everything was normal, and then I saw the sign for the weigh station up ahead. I wasn't worried. My weight was legal, my truck was in perfect shape, and my logs were clean. Pulling into that station was just part of the routine, a small delay on a long journey. I rolled onto the scales, got the green light on my weight, and was waved over to the side for a document check. A young state trooper walked over, probably not a day over 25. He had that crisp uniform, those shiny boots, and an attitude. That said, he was looking for a reason to show his authority. He didn't say hello. He just held out his hand. Documents. I handed over my binder with the manifest, my logbook, everything. He flipped through the pages with a bored look on his face, like he was hoping to find something wrong. And then he did. His finger stopped on one line of the shipping manifest. "This is filled out wrong," he said, his voice flat. I leaned in to look. I'd written the destination city in the wrong box. An honest mistake, the kind of thing I did sometimes when the forms were confusing, with their tiny print in dozens of lines. "Oh, sorry about that, officer. I can fix it right now." I reached for the pen in my shirt pocket, ready to just scratch it out and write it in the right place. A simple fix. But he pulled the binder back sharply. "Don't touch it," he snapped, his voice suddenly loud. "You're just going to make a mess. Can't you even follow simple directions?" His words hit me like a slap. His volume made the other drivers, the ones waiting in line behind me, turn and look. I could feel my face get hot. The familiar burn of shame started climbing up my neck. "I'm sorry, sir. I can get a clean form and fill it out again." I tried to keep my voice steady, to de-escalate, to not draw any more attention. He just laughed, a short, ugly sound. You think we just have extra forms lying around for guys who can't read. And then he did it. He pulled the manifest out of the binder. He held it up in front of my face, and he ripped it. Not a quick tear. He did it slowly, deliberately, looking me right in the eye. The sound, that tearing paper, it was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Then he let the 2 pieces flutter to the ground at my feet. Maybe you should find a job that doesn't require a second-grade education, he said, a little smirk on his face. Now get out of here before you hold up people who actually know what they're doing. I just stood there, frozen, looking at the torn paper on the asphalt. The world just went quiet. All I could feel were the eyes of the other truckers, the eyes of the trooper. In that moment, I wasn't Frank, the veteran driver. I was just a stupid, illiterate fool, just like he said. Now I want to go even deeper on this subject, because the true impact of that moment wasn't just about the embarrassment. It was a profound and brutal revelation. The hidden truth that was exposed that day was that all my hard work, all my miles, all my expertise behind the wheel, it could all be erased in 30 seconds by a man with a badge and a belief that he was better than me. That one incident triggered a complete transformation in my entire mentality. My pride, which had been my armor on the road, was shattered. The behind the scenes of my carefully constructed world, where I could hide my weakness, had been torn open for everyone to see. Every decision I had made in my life up to that point felt like it had led to me standing on that patch of asphalt, humiliated. This wasn't just an interaction, it was an indictment of my entire life, and it forced a series of new decisions that would define the next chapter of my journey. The pain of that moment was incredible, but what came out of it was a clarity that was just as powerful. I understood in that instant that knowledge wasn't a luxury, it was a shield. And I would spend the rest of my life making sure my son had the strongest shield imaginable. That trooper, in his arrogance, thought he was breaking a man. He had no idea he was forging a father's resolve into something as hard and as unbreakable as the steel coils in the back of my truck. He thought he was ending the conversation. He had no idea he was starting a war. Comment below with the words, "The moment it changed." I got back in my truck. I don't remember starting the engine or pulling back onto the highway. The first few miles were a blur. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. My whole body was shaking, not with fear, but with a rage so pure and so hot it felt like it was going to burn a hole right through my chest. The words echoed in my head: illiterate, stupid, can't read. Each word was a nail being hammered into my soul. I wanted to turn the rig around, drive it right back there and, I don't know, scream at him. Tell him I was a good man, an honest worker, a father. But what good would that do? He'd already made up his mind about who I was. And the worst part, the part that cut the deepest, was that little piece of me that felt he was right. I pulled over at the next rest stop, the gravel crunching under my tires. I just sat there in the cab, the engine ticking as it cooled, alone in the silence. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, but I didn't see any of it. All I saw was that trooper's smug face, and in that moment, something inside me shifted. The hot rage began to cool, hardening into something else, something heavy and cold and permanent. It was resolve. I looked at the little picture of Sarah and the smiling, gap-toothed Michael the first kept taped to my dashboard, and the promise I'd made in the hospital all those years ago came roaring back. But this time it wasn't a gentle vow, it was a declaration of war. Right there, in the cab of my Peterbilt, in the middle of nowhere, I made a new promise. A silent one. My son, Michael, would study. He would learn. He would rise so high and become so respected that no one would ever have the power to make him feel the way I felt in that moment. They would look at him, and they would see a man they could not touch, a man they could not break. This became my life's secret mission. Now I want to go even deeper on this subject, because this transformation was more than just an emotional reaction. It was a fundamental change in my entire operating system, a complete overhaul of my mentality. The hidden truth of that moment is that the trooper's humiliation didn't break me. It gave me a target. It gave me a purpose that was clearer than any road map. The behind the scenes of my journey from that point on was no longer about just earning a living. It was about funding an arsenal. Every book Michael needed was a weapon. Every tutor he had was a trainer. Every good grade he brought home was a victory in a war that only I knew I was fighting. The impact was immediate and absolute. The decisions became easy. Take that cross-country run that would keep me on the road for 3 weeks. Yes, because it would pay for a semester of a prep course. Sleep in the cab instead of getting a motel room every time, because that $40 was a new set of textbooks. My personal comfort became irrelevant. My exhaustion didn't matter. The singular goal of Michael's success was the only thing on my mind. This revelation was powerful. I realized that my greatest shame, my lack of education, could be the very thing that fueled my son's greatest strength. I could turn my pain into his power. This wasn't about getting revenge on that one trooper. That was thinking too small. This was about defeating the idea behind the trooper. The idea that a man's worth is measured by the words he can read instead of the character he shows. My son wouldn't just be my victory. He would be my answer. Comment below with the words, the silent vow, and so the grind began. The next few years bled into one long stretch of asphalt and cheap coffee. That silent vow I made in the cab of my truck, it became the fuel in my engine and the fire in my belly. I worked like a man possessed. I took the runs nobody else wanted, the ones that went to the forgotten corners of the country, the ones that kept me away from home for weeks on. And I drove through blizzards in the Rockies, through scorching heat in the deserts of Arizona, through endless, lonely nights on I-80 where the only other souls you see are the headlights of another truck. Passing in the dark, my Peterbilt became my home. I slept in the cab, the rumble of the diesel engine a constant lullaby. I lived off greasy spoon specials and coffee that was thick enough to stand a spoon in. Sarah, God bless her, she was the general holding down the fort. She understood the mission without me ever having to explain the shame that started it. She managed the house, raised our boy, and always had a hot meal waiting for me on the rare occasions I made it home, never once complaining about my absence. She knew this was from Michael, and every dollar I saved, every penny I scraped together, went into a separate account, the Michael Fund. It wasn't just money, it was freedom, it was opportunity, it was the building blocks of a future I was determined to give him. And while my journey was one of miles and sacrifice, Michael's was a parallel journey of the mind. He was a sponge. He devoured books. He stayed up late studying not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He had a curiosity about the world that amazed me. While he was wrestling with algebraic equations under a warm lamp in his bedroom, I was wrestling with a frozen tandem axle pin in a truck stop in Wyoming with numb fingers. While he was winning a spot on the school debate team, learning how to structure an argument and speak with confidence, I was arguing with a dispatcher over a late pickup. I'd come home, smelling of diesel and road grime, and he'd show me a history paper with a big red A on it, and the exhaustion would just melt away. That was my paycheck. That was my reward. Seeing him succeed, seeing him build the kind of knowledge that no one could ever take away from him, that was everything. He never knew the whole truth behind my drive, the hidden reason for my long absences. He just knew his dad worked hard to provide, and he honored that sacrifice by working just as hard in the class room. We were a team, he and I, fighting the same war onto different fronts. Now I want to go even deeper on this subject, because this period of our lives was the ultimate test of my new mentality. It was a complete transformation of what sacrifice even meant. Before the incident, sacrifice was just a hardship. After, it became a strategy. The hidden truth is that I found a strange kind of joy in the grind. Every lonely night I spent in a parking lot 1,000 miles from home wasn't a punishment. It was an investment. The behind the scenes of my life was a relentless cycle of driving, sleeping, and saving. But the revelation for me was that I wasn't losing anything. I was building. This journey wasn't about what I was giving up. It was about what Michael was gaining. The impact of this mindset was profound. It turned pain into power. The decision to embrace the hardship, to see it as a necessary part of the plan, changed everything. I wasn't a victim of my circumstances anymore. I was an architect, designing a better future for my son. People would see a tired, worn-out trucker, but that was just the surface. Underneath, I was a man on a mission, fueled by a promise, patiently playing the long game, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that one day, all these miles, all this work, all this sacrifice, it would lead to a moment of revelation for the whole world to see. It would lead to a victory that was sweeter than any revenge. Comment below with the words, the father's grind. The years of grinding on the road paid off exactly like I planned. Michael graduated high school at the top of his class with honors, valedictorian, standing in that crowded auditorium, listening to my son give a speech about the future, about opportunity. I felt a pride so big it physically hurt my chest. This was it. The first major victory. The foundation was laid. He had scholarships lining up, offers from good universities. I saw the future I had bled for unfolding right in front of me. He could be anything he wanted. A doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, a man whose hands were clean, whose mind was his greatest tool, a man who would be called sir because of the diploma hanging on his wall. A few weeks after graduation, we were sitting at the old kitchen table, the same one where he used to do his homework while I was out on the road. The air was thick with possibility, so I asked him, "What's it gonna be, son? All this hard work, where do you want it to take you?" He looked at me, and he had this calm, steady look in his eyes. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was a young man with a mind of his own. "I've been thinking about it a lot, Dad," he said. "I know what I want to do. I want to join the state police." The words just hung there in the air. State police. For a second, I was sure I'd misheard him. The world just kind of tilted on its axis. It felt like a punch to the gut, like the wind had been knocked out of me. All those years, all those miles, all that sacrifice, all of it was a war against the very thing he now wanted to become. I think he saw the color drain from my face. I couldn't speak. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it. Why? Was this some kind of rebellion? A rejection of the future I had been building for him? The silence stretched on, and finally, I managed to get one word out. "Why, Dad," he said, leaning forward. "All my life, I've heard your stories from the road. I know that world. I know there are good people out there, just trying to make a living, guys like you, and I know they get a raw deal sometimes. I've heard you talk about troopers who are fair and decent, and others who are just bullies with a badge. I want to be one of the good ones. I want to be the guy who helps a stranded motorist, who treats a driver with respect, who upholds the law with integrity, not with intimidation. I want people to see my uniform and feel safe, not scared." He wanted to command respect, not by a title or a degree, but by his character. Now I want to go even deeper on this subject, because this moment was the single greatest transformation of my entire journey. It was a revelation that completely shattered and then rebuilt my entire mentality. The hidden truth, the one that hit me right there at that kitchen table, was that my mission had been too small. I thought the goal was to give my son a fancy degree, so he would be safe from the world of men like that trooper. But Michael, in his wisdom, saw a better way. The ultimate victory wasn't to run from the battlefield. It was to walk onto it and change the rules. This decision had a seismic impact. It was the ultimate behind-the-scenes twist that I could have never engineered myself. My son didn't just want to be respected. He wanted to be a source of respect for others. This was a higher calling than just being a doctor or a lawyer. He was choosing to step directly into the fire that had forged my promise, not to get burned, but to control the flame. This was no longer just my journey of sacrifice. It became our shared journey of redemption. I realized my vow wasn't just about him rising above. It was about him reaching back and lifting others up. His choice wasn't a rejection of my sacrifice. It was the ultimate validation of it, in a way I was too blind to see. He was going to become the man I needed on the road that day, and I knew, with a sudden, shocking clarity, that I had to support him with every fiber of my being. Comment below with the words, "A son's calling," and so began the next phase of our shared mission. Michael didn't just join the state police. He attacked the academy with the same relentless focus he'd given his school books. He aced the physical tests. He mastered the legal coursework. He graduated at the top of his class, with honors. On the day of his graduation, seeing him in that crisp blue uniform, I felt a kind of pride that was deeper and more complex than anything I had felt before. It was a mix of awe and a little bit of fear and an overwhelming sense of completion. He was now part of the very system that had once broken me, but he wasn't joining them. He was going to change them from the inside. He started out on patrol, just a rookie trooper on the highways I knew so well, and right away, he was different. He made it his personal mission to be the kind of officer he talked about that day. At the kitchen table, he was firm, but he was always fair. He was professional, but he was always human. I'd hear things on the road. The CB radio is a grapevine, and word travels fast. I'd hear other truckers talking about a new troop route on the interstate. A young guy who treated you like a person, not a problem. A guy who would help you change a tire in the rain. Who would explain a violation clearly without being condescending. Who called you sir. They didn't know he was my son. Of course, to them, he was just a good cop. To me, every one of those stories was a victory. Every trucker he treated with dignity was a quiet vindication of my sacrifice and of his promise. He rose through the ranks faster than anyone expected. It wasn't because he was playing politics or cutting corners. It was because he was exceptional at his job. He had the perfect combination of intelligence and empathy. He could de-escalate a tense situation with a calm voice, and he could write a report with the precision of a lawyer. He made sergeant, then lieutenant. With every promotion, I saw him become more of the man he was destined to be. He was respected by his superiors for his competence, and he was loved by the troopers under his command because he always had their backs and always led from the front. But the most important thing to me was that he never lost that connection to the road. He never forgot where he came from. He'd call me up sometimes, not as a lieutenant talking to a civilian, but as a son talking to his father. Dad, what's the best way to secure a load of sheet steel? Dad, what's the mood like on the road these days? What are the truckers worried about? He was always learning, always listening. He was using the knowledge he got from books and combining it with the wisdom he got from me. And then, about 12 years into his career, he got the call. He was being promoted to captain, the highest operational rank, a leader, a man whose decisions would have an impact on the entire force. On every highway in the state, he was being given the power to truly shape the culture, to make his philosophy of respect the official policy. The boy who was fueled by my secret vow was now a commander. Now I want to go even deeper on this subject, because Michael's ascent was more than just a successful career path. It was a profound transformation of our family's legacy. The hidden truth is that with every new stripe on his sleeve, the weight of my old shame lessened. The behind the scenes of his journey was a series of strategic decisions he made to always stay true to his core mission. He could have taken easier posts, desk jobs, but he chose to stay connected to the highways, to the world where his father lived and worked. The revelation for me was seeing the impact he was having. He wasn't just my son anymore. He was a force for good in the world, a force I had helped create. His success was a living, breathing testament to a different kind of mentality, one that says you don't have to be a victim of your past. You can be the architect of a better future. The journey from a humiliated trucker to the proud father of a state police captain was long. It was hard, but standing there, pinning the captain's insignia on my son's chest, I realized that every single mile had been worth it. This wasn't just a promotion. It was the fulfillment of a promise made in the dark, now brought into the light for all to see. Comment below with the words, the captain's insignia. 16 years. It's a long time. Long enough for a boy to become a man, for a rookie to become a captain, and for a burning wound to cool into a quiet scar. I was getting close to retirement myself. My back ached more than it used to, and my eyes got tired on the long night drives. But I still took the odd run here and there, more out of love for the road than for the money. One Tuesday morning, Michael called me up. He had a rare day off, and he said, Dad, you heading out today? I told him I had a short run, just a few hours down the interstate. He asked if he could ride along, said he missed the rumble of the engine, the view from the passenger seat. Of course, I said yes. It was like the old days, but better. We rolled out onto the highway, the sun shining, the conversation easy. He was out of uniform, just wearing jeans and a baseball cap. He looked less like a police captain and more like my son. We talked about everything, his kids, my plans for retirement, the price of diesel. It was perfect. And then, up ahead, I saw it. The sign for the way station, the same one. My hands tightened on the wheel. Just for a second, my heart did a little jump. An old reflex I thought had died years ago. I hadn't been through that particular station in a long time. I usually took a different route, but today, the road had brought me back. As we got closer, Michael said, Hey, pull in here. Dad, I want to grab a coffee and say hi to some of the guys. I know most of the troopers at this post. I hesitated for a split second. Did I really want to do this? Did I want to walk back into the place that held my deepest shame? But then I looked at my son, a captain in the state police, asking to introduce his trucker father to his men. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Okay, son, I said, my voice steady. Let's get some coffee. I pulled the rig into the lot and we climbed down. The place had changed a bit, a new coat of paint, a bigger parking area, but it was the same scales, the same building, the same ghosts. We walked inside, and a couple of young troopers immediately straightened up when they saw Michael. "Captain," they said, surprised to see him. Michael greeted them warmly, clapping them on the shoulder. He was a natural leader, you could just feel it. And then, over in the corner, at a small desk, I saw him. He was older, of course. His hair was gray. He had a paunch that pushed against his uniform shirt, and his face was etched with the tired lines of a man who had seen too many long shifts. But it was him, no doubt about it, the same man who had torn up my life 16 years ago. My mouth went dry. The world seemed to slow down. He looked up from his paperwork, his eyes scanning the room, and for a brief, electric moment, his gaze met mine, and I saw it, a flicker of recognition, a ghost of a memory. He knew. He didn't know how he knew, but he knew. He quickly looked back down at his desk, suddenly very interested in a paperclip. Now I want to go even deeper on this subject, because this moment was the culmination of the entire journey. This was the final, unexpected transformation. For 16 years, my mentality had been focused on a future victory. Now, suddenly, the past and the future were colliding right here, in this small, unremarkable room. The hidden truth is that I had rehearsed this moment in my mind 1,000 times, in 1,000 different ways. Sometimes I imagined myself yelling at him. Sometimes I imagined a cold, dignified speech, but the reality was so much more powerful and so much quieter. The behind the scenes of this encounter was a silent battle of memories and revelations. Michael, completely unaware of the drama unfolding, walked over to the desk. "Hey, Roberto," he said, his voice friendly. The man looked up, his face a mask of discomfort. "Captain," he said, standing up a little too quickly, "I didn't expect to see you here." Michael just smiled. "I was just riding along with my dad today. Wanted to grab a coffee, Roberto. I'd like you to meet him. This is my father, Frank." And then it happened. The moment of truth. My son, Captain Michael Silva, introduced me, the trucker, to the man who had called me an illiterate fool. The impact was immediate. The man's eyes darted from Michael's face to mine, and the puzzle pieces clicked into place in his head. The color drained from his face. The trooper who had tried to make me feel small was now standing in front of his boss, and his boss's father. My son was his superior officer. The circle was now complete. Comment below with the words, "The full circle." The man, Roberto, he just stared. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked like a fish out of water. He finally managed to stammer, Your father." Michael, oblivious, just beamed with pride. "Yeah, this is him, the original road warrior. He's the one who taught me everything about respecting the men and women who drive these highways." Roberto extended a hand to me, and I shook it. His palm was sweaty, his grip weak. His eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. He just kept looking at the captain's bars on Michael's collar, and then back in my worn-out trucker's cap. It's an honor, sir," he said to me. "Sir." The word hung in the air, thick with 16 years of unspoken history. The victory was so much sweeter than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was silent. It was complete. There was no need for me to say a word. I didn't have to bring up the past. I didn't have to remind him of the torn paper or the ugly words. His face said it all. The shame, the fear, the dawning realization of what was happening. He wasn't just meeting his boss's father. He was meeting the ghost of his own past. And that ghost was now the father of his commanding officer. My revenge was standing right next to me, not as an act of aggression, but as a testament to love and hard work. The legacy I had built had defeated the insult he had thrown. We didn't stay long. We had our coffee. Michael talked shop with the other troopers, and Roberto just kind of faded into the background, making himself busy with paperwork. As we walked out into the bright sunlight and climbed back into the truck, Michael said, "That was weird. Did you see Roberto? He looked like he'd seen a ghost." I just smiled. "Maybe he did, son. Maybe he did." Later that evening, sitting at home, I finally told him. I told him the whole story. The humiliation at the way station, the ugly words, the torn paper, the silent vow I made in the cab of my truck the secret mission that had fueled me for all those years. He listened, his face a storm of emotions, anger, sadness, understanding. When I finished, there were tears in his eyes. "Dad," he said, his voice thick, "why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because," I told him, "I didn't want you to carry my anger. I wanted you to build your own legacy, not to be weighed down by my past. I never wanted revenge on that man, Michael. I just wanted you. Your success, your character, your integrity. That was the only victory I ever needed. You didn't just fulfill my promise, son. You became my promise. You are my victory, and it's a victory that's better than any revenge. It's quiet, it's dignified, and it's ours. Now I want to go even deeper on this subject, because this is the final transformation, the ultimate revelation of the entire journey. The hidden truth is that true victory isn't about defeating an enemy. It's about building something better than the world that hurt you. The mentality of revenge is a prison. It keeps you chained to the past, chained to the person who wronged you. But the mentality of legacy, that's freedom. The decision to pull my pain into my son's future instead of into my own anger was the most important decision of my life. The impact of that choice created a ripple effect I could have never foreseen. The behind the scenes of this story isn't about a confrontation between two men. It's about a father's love rewriting the future. It's about the quiet, patient journey of turning shame into honor. The final revelation for me and for you is that the best answer to disrespect is not to lower yourself to that level. It's to raise your children to a level your critics can only look up to in awe. This entire story, this whole 16-year journey, it all came down to a simple, powerful truth. Don't get even, get better, and in doing so, you win a victory that no one can ever take away from you. Comment below with the words, "A true victory." So that's my story. It's funny. For 16 years I thought it was a story about shame, but I was wrong. It was always a story about a father's love, and how that love can be a force more powerful than any insult, any humiliation. It can build a legacy that silences all the noise. And if you stayed with me all the way to the end of this journey, I truly thank you for listening. It means more than you know. If this story resonated with you, giving it a like is a quiet and powerful way to show it. And for those of you who really felt this message, let me know you made it this far by commenting below with the words, "A father's victory." It's good to know who's really on this journey with me. If these are the kinds of stories that you want more of, stories about real life and the quiet strength it takes to win, then consider subscribing to the channel. That way we can stay connected. And this conversation doesn't have to end here. There's another video popping up on your screen right now that I think you'll appreciate. Go ahead and click on it, and let's keep the journey going.